You mentioned that we don't know the degree to which this change has to do with Xi Jinping or the party apparatus. And question, going back to Confucius of hierarchy and how does the power within this very strict one-party state work? What can we say? What do we know about the structure of this Communist Party apparatus? How much internal power struggle is there? How much power does Xi Jinping actually have? Is there any insight we have into the system?
So James Palmer, who worked in Beijing as a journalist and now is an editor at Foreign Policy, wrote an important piece a few years ago about just we should really be straight about what a black box the Chinese elite politics are, and really not try to pretend we know more than we do. We did used to have more of a sense of these kind of ideological factions, but also partly about different views of how much tinkering there should be with the economy and things like that. And they were also partly based on personalities and personal ties. But we did have a sense you could sort of map out these kinds of rival power bases and things. And we just have much less of a sense of that under Xi Jinping. It's very hard to know, other than this sort of small group around him, how it works. We don't have a major defector who says, yeah, this is how Xi Jinping. We have Xi Jinping's self-presentation and a lot of things that are then said about him. There were some false expectations about him that some people thought, oh, he's going to be a reformer because his father was a liberalizing figure, and that doesn't work that way. And he does seem to care about orderliness. He does seem to care about certain things. He wants to present himself as a kind of scholarly figure in touch with China's deep past. We know he's a strong nationalist and a kind of cultural nationalist as well as political nationalist. But beyond that, we don't have that much of a sense of what makes him tick. We get little hints. There was a secret speech where he leaked out that he talked about how the Soviet Union had collapsed because the leadership didn't pay enough attention to ideology. And he also said that none of them were manly enough to keep control. So I imagine if he and Putin ever have a kind of heart-to-heart conversation, one thing they'd find to agree on is this sort of distaste for Gorbachev. This feeling that Gorbachev was the wrong way to do things.
Not manly enough?
Yeah, not strong enough about, really keeping control. And, for Putin, it would be that it led to the Soviet Union, to the loss of an empire. But for Xi Jinping, there is a bit of being haunted by what happened to the Soviet Union. And I'm not going to be the leader who sees the diminishment of this landmass that was, in a sense, rebuilt over time for Mao and then Deng Xiaoping. You have the story, a very powerful story about the Chinese past that the Chinese Communist Party makes a lot out of. But that Chiang Kai-shek, the Nationalist Party, who was Mao's great rival, also made a lot out of, and that has a partial basis in fact, was that from the middle of the 19th century to the middle of the 20th century, China, which had been this strong force in the world, got bullied and nibbled away at by foreign powers. And it's important to realize there are elements of that story that are very true. And the answer they had is that under my watch, that's not going to happen. And the reason why my party deserves to rule is because it can reassert China's place in the world. And both the Nationalist Party and the Communist Party predicated themselves on this kind of nationalistic story of being in a position to prevent that from happening again.